To talk about shattering ceilings, especially in this moment when it's even harder than ever to do so. The good news is that I am here with 3 inspiring women who have all done this in their lives and are here to share a little bit of that wisdom with us. I want to start with some quick introductions. We have Karen, who is the first woman ever to lead Deloitte's tax business. We have Nazanin, who's an actor, a producer, and an activist who has really championed the woman life freedom movement in Iran. And we have Amanda, who is an astronaut, no big deal, and an activist who runs an organization called RISE, which helps support survivors of sexual assault. So I want to start with a topic that I know we're all thinking about as women who are at a women's summit. I want to talk about DEI. There have been rollbacks in the government, there have been rollbacks in the corporate world, and there have been rollbacks even in places like the arts. It's an incredibly tricky time, and I just want to start with a quick show of hands. Who here in this room is worried about the rollbacks that are currently happening with DEI? I'm seeing a lot of hands. And the good news is we're going to talk about this today and really get into it and see if we can find a path forward. So, Karen, I want to start with you. You are a female leader in a corporate world that is really traditionally male-led, and you have shattered ceilings along the way, but you also have to deal with these things. How do you find a way to work with what's happening, but also really create a company that's equitable and fair and treats its employees well?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and one, that I've been thinking about a lot over the past, weeks and months. And, we were talking about this a little bit before we came into the session here. As a company, right, in the United States, right, we're required to follow sort of what's going on from a legal and a regulatory perspective. But what I've been telling people within our organization, and I've been doing a lot of speaking to different groups over the past couple of weeks, is that what's really important to remember is that, as an organization, we have a culture, and we have a culture of inclusion, and we have a culture where we believe that we want to create a talent experience for our folks where the best professionals can come to be and where they can thrive in their careers. And regardless of what might be happening externally, we are still the same company today that we were a month ago or 2 months ago or 3 months ago. And so it's really up to us as leaders to really just to continue to model those values and those behaviors of inclusivity that are so important to us. And I think we can do both, right? We can exist in a world where we have to comply with regulations, but we could also live our values and model them for our people.
Yeah, that's great. Nazanin, I want to talk to you about Hollywood. I know you do many things, but one of your roles is as an actor and a producer. These rollbacks are happening in the arts, and you see this conservatism infecting Hollywood, especially with tech companies really kind of, running the scene in a way that used to not be the case. How have you seen this affect Hollywood? How have you seen this affect, your interactions with trying to find work and moving forward in that world?
First of all, it's a huge honor to be in this room. It's so empowering to be with you all. I think, I've been doing this a long time. I've been in this industry for almost 2 decades. And I came into it in a post 9/11 climate. So I'm very used to sort of the tokenism and the good Muslim, the good Middle Eastern character. Let's just have that one person on screen to portray. It never feels good. I don't want to be a token. But I will say this short story. Several years ago, I was invited. I had the privilege and honor of being invited to become a member of the Motion Picture Academy. And I remember I was with a dear male friend of mine who happens to be a film director. And he said, well, it's a great time for you. You're a woman and you're a woman of color. And I thought, that's a jab in my heart. I felt like this was sort of a milestone, something that I should be proud of. And I realized it's still looked at as a quota, checking a box. Like, we need more women in the academy, so therefore let's just up the number of women we're introducing into the academy this year. And I don't like that feeling. So I think DEI serves the purpose of leveling the playing field, as it should. And the backlash to that, of course, is it fair? But surely we can have an industry that is merit-based, but also includes representation and diversity. And I think that's what we should be working towards.
But what a situation to be in with someone who you trust, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Amanda, I first met you in 2020 because you were one of a group of women who was included in our very first Women of the Year. You wear a lot of hats in your life. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, you're about to be an astronaut. I feel like that deserves a clap, right? Like Amanda's going to go to space. It's a big deal. You're also going to be the very first Vietnamese woman to go to space, which is incredible. From going to space to activism, how do you find ways to challenge the status quo?
By existing. I think that joy is the most radical form of rebellion. And my story is a story of so many people. Gender-based violence impacts, in some studies, up to half of women in STEM. In my situation, I was dreaming of going to be an astronaut, and then I was assaulted. And when I found out that my evidence could be destroyed, I had to make a choice between my justice or my dreams of being an astronaut. So at those crossroads, I put down my telescope, picked up a pen, and rewrote the law. And it took 10 years to do that, but I'm finally able to honor that person I was before I was hurt. Thank you. All astronauts have a zero-G indicator when we reach space. It's a little something that floats. And mine is something very special to me. When I left the hospital after my rape, I wrote a promise to myself, never, never, never give up. And so I taped that, and I looked at that note to help me graduate Harvard. I looked at it when I was fighting for my rights in Congress and the United Nations, and I will be looking at it when I float over Earth.
It's incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. Karen, you work in what I can only imagine is an incredibly male-dominated space. I'm
Getting better.
Well, that's good. That's good. We like to hear that. I have to imagine that mentorship was an important thing for you along the way, right? Something that helped you reach this kind of incredible high in your career. Can you tell us something that a mentor did to help you, and maybe how you've tried to pay that forward in your relationships with the people that you work with or people that you might mentor outside of your work at Deloitte?
Yeah, for sure. I have so many great stories of mentorship. I've been blessed throughout my career, honestly, starting from the day I walked into the firm 30 some odd years ago as an intern. I had the great privilege of working for a woman who at the time was a senior manager about to be a partner who was going to do that on a part-time schedule. And if you want to talk about perhaps consultancy being sort of more of a male-dominated workplace, you look at what it was in the early 90s. I wasn't allowed to wear pants to work, if you could believe that. Like, there was a no pants rule. But this woman was about to become partner on a part-time schedule, and she was going to be the first Deloitte woman to ever make partner on a part-time schedule. And I was blessed to have, her name's Ellen, have her as my mentor really for most of my career until I retired. And she was sort of with me through thick and thin. I even, the Deloitte folks in the room have heard this story before, but after 9/11, so I was at the World Financial Center on 9/11, and, the day I went back to work, we were in a new office because our office had been destroyed. I went into labor unexpectedly at the office, and Ellen was even my labor and delivery coach, right?
That's a real mentor.
That's a real mentor, and really just pounding the table for me right throughout my career. And so there's a point I want to make here, though, about mentorship and sponsorship. And so lots of us as women, I think. We're blessed with mentors. We have probably more mentors than we know what to do with in some cases if we're fortunate enough to work in a community of women. And mentors are women who speak with you or men who speak with you, right? And they help support you on your journey. But how many of us really have true sponsors? And the difference between a mentor and a sponsor is, right, the sponsors speak on your behalf, right? They amplify your voice when you're in the room. They amplify your voice when they're not in the room, and they pound the table for you. And I think for us to really be successful collectively as women, we have to have just as many sponsors, if not more, as we have mentors. And so one of the things that I try to do sort of in my leadership role is to make it clear that sponsorship for all of our professionals coming up in the organization, but sort of the women and you know, the people of color, but all of our professionals really need to have sponsors. And we're not doing our job as leaders if we are not thinking 1, 2, 3 generations ahead of us and looking for those people in the room who have so much to say, but they don't know how to use their voice. And how do we help pull their voice into the room? How do we help amplify their message and make sure that they're being seen and heard by the right people? That's, I think, what we all need to do collectively, is just really amplify our voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Nazanin, have you had a mentor experience that has helped you move forward?
So many. I think if I'm looking to where I draw strength and courage, it's really the women of Iran, everyday heroism. And mentorship comes in many different forms. Sometimes it's having conversations with people, women in Iran in particular, who on a daily basis risk their lives for a better tomorrow. And what that looks like is sometimes, a lot of the times, hundreds of thousands of women flouting the compulsory hijab. And what that also looks like is pulling their son away, who was in the security forces, who was about to engage on a brutal crackdown. And that centrality of women in these protest movements, we've seen it in Liberia, in Tunisia, in Sudan in 2019. But what makes this moment unique, and I don't mean to pivot this to my activism, but really, okay. When you talk about mentors, to me, they are my mentors. They're teaching me every day how to be, because I think courage is contagious, right? We've seen it with the Me Too movement and so many other things. And in Iran, that what's happening right now is the spark and engine of this movement, woman, life, freedom, are women. And I think that's my mentorship. That the conversations I have on a daily basis with those women is what gives me courage and motivates me.
That's wonderful. And I think, you know, in reading about you've spoken about this interconnectivity of human rights and women's rights. And I think you have to connect these stories in order to tell them and to make these larger points, right? Amanda, on that note, you have a memoir coming out soon, right?
Do 7 more days.
7 more days. Yeah. Saving 5 is the title, correct?
Yes.
Amazon Bookshop, all the right places.
That's right. Thank you.
In it, you tell your life story, which you've shared some of with us today. And I imagine, you know, a lot of what you've done is really be relentless in your push, right? To find hope for yourself, find hope for other people. And I read that you said that hope is a discipline. Talk about that a little bit. Share with us how that's helped you in your journey and how you hope that helps other people as well.
Absolutely. You know, I really think that hope is something you can exercise every day. It is contagious or a renewable resource. And I find myself practicing it in little ways, like in glimmers. So if you've ever heard of this concept, it's finding little things in your life that spark joy. Maybe it's how you like your cup of coffee in the morning, or the way that, you know, the leaf is falling to the ground, and that brings you peace. You know, our brains are wired to pick up oftentimes things that are negative, but if we practice appreciation and gratitude, and just notice the things that make us happy, that has been phenomenally helpful in stretching my hope. Also, I think that hope is different from a dream. In order to have hope, you have to have a plan. That is what gives the foundation for that hope. And what makes me so hopeful now is seeing that change is possible. You know, every day I wake up and I work with my team of organizers, and they're on the front lines pushing for women's rights. And I do see that when they sit down, even in deep red states, blue states, purple states, we're still passing laws. My team and I have passed 91 laws. All of them have been bipartisan. And even when we were at the United Nations, trying to pass our General Assembly resolution, people told us it's impossible, not everywhere is a democracy. And so the voice of civil society is really, really seen differently. But we ended up after 6 years of organizing, took a while, but we ended up passing in the United Nations unanimously. And that just shows that impossible is just an opinion.
Karen, I want to return to this idea of shattering ceilings, which is something that you've done as a woman who's done something for the first time. Once you've broken these barriers, what happens next? And how do you really think about, how do you change the organization even beyond being the first? You mentioned this concept of sponsorship, which is really beautiful, and I think is a big part of what we're talking about here. But how do you think about what happens after that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. When I think about the future of our organization, and right, so we are, for those of you not familiar, so we're a consulting firm. In the U.S., we employ about 150,000 people, and more than that globally. And the work that we do is so impacted right now by everything that's going on externally. So whether it's the changing regulatory environment, the panel before this was talking about sort of what's going on from a technological evolution perspective, the impact of AI, all of the different things that are impacting our talent in terms of how they want to develop, how they want to experience the rest of their careers, right? Geopolitically, what's going on, the great work these two amazing women here are doing, how that impacts our people every day. And so when I think about what is my role, right? So I'm in this job. I've been in this role for 2 years. I'll probably do it for a few more years. And so I always ask myself, well, what comes next? And the way I view my role today is to really set the organization up for what comes after me. And so are we doing the right thinking about those strategic forces that are impacting the business and making the right decisions today so that not just 1 year from now or 2 years from now, but 5 and 10 years from now, we've got an organization that's been able to sustain itself and really continue to create those development opportunities for people. And for me, it really does come back to sponsorship and succession and really making sure that we are incredibly intentional about finding those I like the glimmer and the sparks. I like to say, I like to find those sparks in our talent pool, those folks who are just going to continue to light up the room and really drive change forward, and finding those sparks and nurturing them until they grow into a flame, because we are a people business. And so if we can't nurture our people and get them to think strategically and bring us to the next generation, we won't be successful as an organization. And that's what I view as my job.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Well, I want to end with a quick lightning round. The title of this panel was A Masterclass on Shattering Ceilings. So I'm going to put each of you on the spot. I apologize in advance. Give me your 30-second theme of your masterclass. Karen, I'll start with you.
Own your greatness. I think every one of us has just greatness embedded within us. And I think very often we are, whether it's imposter syndrome or whether it's we want to be a little bit humble about what we do. But you guys are all in this room because you do great things. Own that greatness. Teach other people how to own the greatness. Pull them up behind you, and we will all be collectively more successful.
That's wonderful. Nazanin?
Sometimes you're invited to the table, sometimes you have to knock down the doors and get to the table. Either way, I think that solution-based advocacy is the most important thing. What I mean by that is we shouldn't be focused on what we oppose. What are we for? What do we want? I also believe in leading with love, and that's not some hippy-dippy idea. It means reserve your fight, lead with love the people, the disenfranchised people, the less represented people that you want to help, don't lead with the hatred for their oppressors. And I think that will lead to a more equitable, egalitarian tomorrow.
Amanda?
The greatest lesson on courage I've ever gotten is from my mom. She's a boat refugee. and she swam so I can fly, across the ocean so I can touch the sky. She was caught in a tidal wave storm, and her boat was sinking. And during this storm, another big ship came and decided to rescue them, but they only threw one rope, and each refugee had to climb this rope in the storm. And she said that if you let go, then the ocean would swallow you. She said the only way she was able to climb was by doing it one hand at a time, to not think of the entire rope, but just to have courage for the next and the next and the next. So really, what's emailing a senator? I get the lesson from that is that you don't have to have bravery and courage for your entire journey. You just need it for the next step and the next step and the next.
These are all wonderful words to live by. When these actually become master classes, I expect you all to subscribe. I know I will.